We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Please join me in the chalice lighting words. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share. Good morning. Welcome to Cascade Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We're here in our virtual studio for Sunday morning worship. I'm Christina Davitt. This morning, I'm joined by our readers, Ronnie Craven and Deb Bryant. And Steve Clem is our technical advisor, and of course, our wonderful CUUF musicians are with us as well. So let's take a moment to settle into our space and prepare our hearts for worship. Breathe in and breathe out. Let us set aside our worries, our concerns, and join together in the spirit of worship. This morning's call to worship is We Are the Ones. We are the ones, the men, the women, the children of today. We cannot wait. We are the ones, the tired, the angry, the poor, the lonely, the distracted, and the confused. We cannot wait. We are the ones, the clerks, the corporate executives, the mothers, the fathers, the ship builders and the ship sailors, the ministers and the mindful wanderers, the politicians and the pickers of cherries. We cannot wait. We are the ones whose task it is to take what we have and make the best world we can. We cannot wait. My friends, let us lift up our hammers and our nails, lift up our voices and sing, lift up our hearts and pray. Let us lead our world into the light, because we are the ones and we cannot wait. Come, let us worship together. Please lift your spirit and voice to sing our opening hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
When Women Are Warriors by Jay Jefferson from SyracuseCulturalWorkers.com. When women are warriors, they still make dinner and try to explain the world to their mothers and their daughters. When women are warriors, they go on being grandmothers, whispering warrior words and singing ancient songs about love and justice. When women are warriors, they plant gardens and walk the stone beaches, gathering driftwood and watching sails on the horizon. They brew tea for friends and gather in small groups for silence. When women are warriors, they think of themselves as girls before they knew they needed to be warriors.
This is adapted from How the 1918 Flu Pandemic Helped Advance Women's Rights by Christine Crudo Blackburn, Gerald W. Parker, and Morton Wendelboe. The Conversation, SmithsonianMag.com. While disasters are by definition devastating, sometimes they can lead to a small silver lining. 100 years ago, a powerful strain of the flu swept the globe, infecting 1/3 of the world's population. The aftermath of this disaster, too, led to unexpected social changes, opening up new opportunities for women, and in the process, irreversibly transforming life in the United States. The virus disproportionately affected young men, which, in combination with World War I, created a shortage of labor. This gap enabled women to play a new and indispensable role in the workforce during the crucial period just before the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which granted women suffrage in the United States 2 years later. The severity of the epidemic in the U.S. was enough to temporarily shut down parts of the economy in 1918. In New England, coal deliveries were so severely affected that people, unable to keep their homes heated, froze to death at the height of winter. During the 1918 flu outbreak, researchers estimate businesses in Little Rock, Arkansas, saw a decline of 40 to 70%. The worker shortage caused by the flu and World War I opened access to the labor market for women, and in unprecedented numbers, they took jobs outside the home. Following the conclusion of the war, the number of women in the workforce was 25% higher than it had been previously. And by 1920, women made up 21% of all gainfully employed individuals in the country. While this gender boost is often ascribed to World War I alone, women's increased presence in the workforce would have been far less pronounced without the 1918 flu. Women began to move into employment roles that were previously held exclusively by men, many of which were in manufacturing. As women filled what had typically been male workplace roles, they also began to demand equal pay for their work. Gaining greater economic power, women began to more actively advocate for various women's rights issues, including, but not limited to, the right to vote as well as social and financial independence. Leadership positions within the workforce could now be occupied by women, especially in the garment industry, but also in the military and police forces. The U.S. even got its first woman governor when Nellie Taylor Roth took her oath of office in 1923 in Wyoming. An increased ability to make decisions in their personal and professional lives empowered many women and started to elevate their standing. With the war over, and increased female participation in the labor force, politicians could not ignore the critical role that women played in American society. Even President Woodrow Wilson, who previously at best had a lukewarm support for women's suffrage, began to argue in 1918 that women were a part of the American war effort and the economy more broadly, and as such should be afforded the right to vote. Outside of work, women also became more involved in community decision-making. Women's changing social role increased support for women's rights. The 1918 influenza pandemic was devastating, but the massive human tragedy had one silver lining. It helped elevate women in American society and financially providing them more freedom, independence, and a louder voice in the political arena. Women are warriors. Yes, my friends, women have always been and will continue to be warriors, faced with historical and ongoing challenges such as motherhood, child raising, and work, earning 79 cents to every dollar a man makes for the same job, unequal civil rights, domestic violence, and a general lack of RESPECT. The crux of the problem is power, or more particularly, the lack of power. With the exception of only 6 matriarchal societies across the globe, women still live in communities where they comprise 50% or more of the population, but do not have commensurate power over how those communities are run. And so, what can be done? What lessons can we, the people of today, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, learn from the past history of the influenza epidemic of 1918? Is there any hope? Yes, there is. We need only to persist, to know that it has been done, that it can be done, and to try again. In Hawaiian, hiki no, it can be done, and hanaho, try again. The Centers for Disease Control tells us that the 1918 influenza pandemic was the most severe in recent history. It was caused by an H1N1 virus with genes of avian origin. Although there is not universal consensus regarding where the virus originated, it spread worldwide during 1918 to 1919, 100 years ago. In the United States, it was first identified in military personnel in spring 1918. It is estimated that about 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population, became infected with this virus. The number of deaths was estimated to be at least 50 million worldwide, with almost 675,000 in the United States. The Washington Post reports on women during the 1918 flu pandemic, like Mildred Geraldine Jerry Shopples, a 102-year-old New Englander who lived through a severe bout of the flu during the 1918 pandemic as a baby. And now, a century later, punctuated by 2 bouts of cancer, Shopples also has recovered from COVID-19 in this pandemic of 2020. Shopples was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, on January 18, 1918, when World War I was raging, and women didn't even have the right to vote. 11 months after she was born, in November, the same month the war officially ended, baby Jerry, her mother, and her teenage brother Joseph all came down with the dreaded flu. Shopples was so ill that when her parents changed her diaper, they didn't bother pinning it because she couldn't move. Doctors feared that she and her mother would die, although Joseph's case was mild. After her recovery from the 1918 flu pandemic, Jerry Shopples recalls kids being put out sick for weeks at a time, with ailments like scarlet fever and measles, and they would have a quarantine sign on their house. Her childhood is full of memories from daily life in the early 20th century, such as waking up in the summertime to the clop, clop, clop of the milkman's horse, and going to a Saturday movie matinee for 10 cents. Her life intersected with a long-ago generation for today. Jerry Shopples remembers assemblies in elementary school in which Civil War veterans would speak. In May of this year, Shopples felt sick for a few days and had a spiking fever. She went to the hospital where she got tested for the novel coronavirus. The test came back positive, but by then she was feeling better. I figured this is probably a little much for somebody who's 102, and that this is probably going to take her, said her daughter. But Shopples recovered and feels fine now, to everyone's astonishment. This woman, and many like her, are warriors. So what challenges do women face in the COVID-19 pandemic of today? The mission-driven consulting group, FSG, lists 7 issues affecting women and girls during COVID-19 in 3 areas: economic impact, health and well-being, and healthcare systems. Economic impacts include a greater burden of domestic and care work, higher rate of job losses, and reduced financial independence and future prospects. Globally, women carry out at least 2.5 times more unpaid care work than men, and COVID-19 has increased that burden by a further 30%. As families navigate pandemic-driven home-based learning, more and more women will be forced to quit their jobs or be fired if they can't keep their 3-year-olds from Zoom bombing work meetings. Nala Valji, the senior gender advisor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, says, "Our formal economy is only possible because it is subsidized by women's unpaid work." Ms. Valji goes on to say that crises amplify existing inequalities, such as those experienced by the majority of single-parent households headed by women and the majority of refugees and internally placed individuals around the world who are women and girls. Even for relatively privileged women in academia, Juliana Villone reports in the journal Nature that the effects of increased childcare responsibilities and domestic burdens have led to women's publishing rates falling relative to men's during the pandemic. Helen Lewis, writing in Atlantic Monthly, says that some people have noticed, well, it can't be so bad to be confined at home, pointing out that William Shakespeare and Sir Isaac Newton did some of their best work while Europe was ravaged by the plague. These Pollyannas should be reminded while that is true, another answer is also obvious. Neither one of them had childcare responsibilities. They never experienced what Minna Dubbin calls mom rage, expanded from its initial meaning of the unrestrained anger many women experience during pregnancy, postpartum, and beyond, to a COVID-19 rightful anger being responsible for their children, not only their care and feeding, but education and entertainment as well, all the time. Deb Perlman describes this as the COVID-19 parent trap. She experiences this as a throwback to the 1950s when mothers were absolutely expected to stay home with their children and not work outside the home. It was thought of as bad for children if mom went off to work. Kim Brooks replies that while pancakes for breakfast are a nice gesture on Mother's Day, if it really is better for a parent to be at home, a better answer would be to pay those raising their children. Second, the health and well-being effects of COVID-19 include an increased risk of teen pregnancy. As a result of school closures during a recent Ebola outbreak, approximately 18,000 teenage girls became pregnant. Also, the FSG group reports spikes in sexual, physical, and domestic violence and exploitation due to national lockdowns, leaving women at home with their abusers. Dr. Terry Apter wrote in April in Psychology Today that 3 out of 4 Americans are confined at home with their children. The executive director of UN Women writes that and adds that confinement due to COVID-19 is fostering tension and strain created by the security, health, and money worries. Third, COVID-19 healthcare impacts include an increased risk of exposure for frontline healthcare workers, 70% of whom are women, such as nurses, personal care attendants, and direct service providers. Not a day goes by that we don't hear or read of continued COVID-19 exposures, particularly in long-term care facilities, where many of the hands-on workers are female, who may or may not have health benefits, even here in the Wenatchee Valley. Additionally, FSG reports that 70% of global health leadership is male, so in COVID-19 policy spaces, there is inadequate representation of women. Finally, reducing healthcare access during the pandemic for women forces them to take unnecessary risk, from unsafe abortion to taking unapproved medicines while pregnant or breastfeeding. Sanitary pads were initially excluded from lists of pandemic essential products in several countries, which has the effect of keeping women and girls at home, unable to go out to work or school. So if Ms. Valji is correct, and that crises amplify existing inequalities, then the problems we have today are the same problems we have always had, but more so. So what can we do? Hiki no, it can be done. Hanaho, try again.
I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. There is a hurting in my family, and there is sorrow in my town. There is a panic all across the nation, and there is wailing the whole world round. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly, and may the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though they burn our eyes. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty yoke to hold my confusion, and give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder, and give me an ocean to hold my tears. But I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of
So, are we willing? Are we willing to pick up our hammer and nails, raise our voices in song, and our hearts in prayer? I offer 4 suggestions for this time. First, tackle problems at home. The authors of 7 key issues affecting women and girls during the COVID-19 pandemic and what you can do about them suggest that we start at home. Ensure that men and boys share domestic and care work equally with women and girls, and create time to discuss with everyone in your household what needs to be done and how to divide this work. I didn't realize how far ahead of her time my mother was when she equally assigned chores among the boys and the girls. Anyone could and did set the table and take out the garbage after dinner. But to be fair, it was only the girls who were expected to learn to cook. Discuss flex schedules with your employers so that you can more equally share domestic work. Second, learn from others. There are excellent examples of countries led by women whose COVID-19 effects have not been as severe as those here in the US. Demand that women's voices be included in the decision-making process, and not just women's voices. It appears that organizations that are more diverse and inclusive perform better. To this end, I offer the equity decision-making tool adopted this year by the West Side Congregation of Unitarian Universalists in Seattle. The purpose of this tool is to encourage everyone involved in the congregation to think about and address the equity impacts of choices in programming, worship language and structure, RE curriculum, staffing, funding, and policy. All members of the community are asked to strive to improve their anti-racist practices and social justice awareness through all of the activities and choices. Westside UU is committed to making the congregation a safe, inclusive, and welcoming environment for everyone who feels called to their community and the principles of Unitarian Universalism. Westside UU uses this tool when they are facing the overall setting of priorities or strategic direction, decisions about the allocation of funding and other resources, choice of a programmatic focus or theme, planning for the content, promotion, and logistics for a significant event or program, planning for gathering feedback from the congregation through a survey or other feedback mechanism, as well as recruiting new staff, committee members, or other leadership positions. This is something for all of us to strongly consider, using equity as a basis for decision making. Now, third and most importantly, we must UU the vote. We must vote. Say it again. We must vote. We must exercise the franchise to make our individual and collective will known. My friends, you all know we live in extraordinary times with a pandemic, racial tensions rightly uprising from 400 years of oppression, and a lack of considerate leadership among other national and local problems. So register and vote. Talk to your friends and family about voting. Check out uuthevote.org for more resources. Finally, follow the Dalmatian principle of persistence. In Hawaiian, hiki no, hana ho. It can be done. Try again. Now, for many years, we had a Dalmatian. He was a lovely dog, but very persistent. So we're talking about a dog that could take a pizza out of the oven and eat it, eat the entire corned beef off the counter at my mother's house on the high holy day of St. Patrick's Day, eat his way through a whole wheel of brie and a Costco-sized package of hot dogs without a stomachache. And if he wanted to go for a hike, boy, was he persistent. And we must be as well. Every day, we must practice persistence. What can we learn from the women of 1918 who did win the right to vote? Even convincing Woodrow Wilson to speak in their favor is also persistence. Women are and will be warriors, persistent warriors. The 1918 flu pandemic, along with World War I, thrust women into the workforce as never before, offering economic and social opportunities. May the COVID-19 pandemic teach us that we as women and we as a society cannot wait, that we must be persistent in our efforts to make the world more right. Because as Holly Near says, we are a gentle, angry people. We are full of mom rage who need each other to move forward together. Amen. Let us join together in the spirit of prayer. Our prayer today is a chant written especially for this service, for us, for today. It is a chant and a prayer for persistence. We say in Hawaiian, hiki no. for the courage to know that it can be done, and then Hanaho, for we will try again. Please join me as we say, Hiki no, Hanaho. 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 Please join me in prayer or meditation. Thank you for your presence. Please lift up your spirit and voice now to sing our closing hymn, We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
My friends, let us lift up our hammers and our nails. Lift up our voices and sing. Lift up our hearts and pray. Let us lead our world into the light, because we are the ones, and we cannot wait. And may love be with you. Please join me in the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now please raise your hands and spirits and join me in our closing song.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. We enter community intentionally, living with grace and love each day. We enter community, beloved community. We celebrate our values on our way. Listening and speaking, embracing joys and sorrows. We share our gifts and strength in service to the world. And when we fall, we forgive and begin again in love. We enter community intentionally, living with grace and love each day. We enter community, beloved community. We celebrate our values on our way. Listening and speaking, embracing joys and sorrows. We share our gifts and strength in service to the world.